Hey, greetings, Fred in Alaska. Sorry it's been a minute. Been dealing with a whole lot of snowfall. So it's Alaska, you know, what do you do? What I wanted to share with you today happened 2 years ago in May, just outside the Lake Clark National Park and Preserve at a cabin. Josh and Bridget, their real first names, they didn't want to share their last name. They were newlyweds, and one of their relatives had given them the offer to honeymoon and get the cabin that the family owns near there ready for other visitors over the season. And so, of course, hey, trip to Alaska, remote cabin, honeymoon, you know, hey, why not? So they jumped on that. Well, they were there for a week, and the first 2-3 days were just a lot of mosquitoes, a lot of clearing a small brush, things of this nature. They were basically clearing the landing, you know, getting the small dock ready, just little nitnoid things, nothing too major. Again, they were there to enjoy themselves. And on the third night, which in May, it's getting into land of the midnight sun time, so it doesn't get overly dark in the sky, but in the tree lines, because the leaves are all popping out, it's dark. They kept hearing this weird owl hoot, and this owl hoot kept getting their attention. It was at a cadence of every few seconds, you know, just this hoot over and over, and they were concerned there was an injured owl. And so Josh convinced Bridget, you know, hey, follow me out, let's go see if we could find it. Maybe it got caught in a trapper's snare or something, or a fishing line or something. Let's go check it out. Well, the way the cabin was set up is it was approximately 50 yards back from the body of water where they were at, and around it was approximately another 30 yards circumference around the cabin, just cleared brush as far as keeping open line of sight in case bears get close, right? So they come down the stairs, because there's only one way in and out, the front door, and there's two windows, one on either side of the door, and one on it would be the left hand side as you're facing the cabin, and then one in the far back just above this makeshift sink and kitchen area. So he's looking out these windows that he could, trying to determine where is this owl, what direction should we look. He finds his flashlight, nice bright 800 lumen job, you know, he checks it, it's working just fine. Grabs his .45 auto, holsters it, didn't want to go out there, you know, and potentially walk into a bear, which is smart, at least he had something on his hip. Well, Bridget, as soon as they step outside the door, there's a very small deck, not even quite 8 feet, and it's, you know, just a small square deck, and there's a few steps down. They get out on a deck, and she immediately sensed something wasn't right and told Josh, hey, it's not sounding like an owl anymore. It's sounding like something imitating an owl. And Josh stands there and listens, and he's like, you know, you're kind of right. That's weird. So he has this light and gun. He's like, I'm going to check it out. We're in Alaska. It's our first trip to Alaska. They don't know nothing about the wildlife outside of bears and bear warnings, you know, from those who they went with. So he lights up, and he's walking around the circumference of the cabin, just checking out the tree line, and it's thick vegetation in there all the way around this place, and the mosquitoes are still biting. So he's kind of shooing mosquitoes and doing his thing with his flashlight, and as he's walking, he hears something behind him and turns around. It's Bridget followed him. She was going to stay on the porch, but she decided to follow. She kept telling him, something doesn't feel right. I feel like we're being watched. And he was kind of like, I think you're a little paranoid. You know, we're first time in Alaska. I think you're just overthinking it, and I think we'll be just fine. They get around to the back side, which basically right underneath that window where the makeshift kitchen is on the back side of the cabin. And as they get up to that window, they hear the hoot again, and it sounds like it's directly in front of them, straight out from that window, you know, roughly 30 yards before the brush line. So he beams, and initially they saw some eye shine, and it moved. And so they figured, oh, well, those look like big eyes. Owls have big eyes, so they put, you know, hey, it's an owl. and it moved. So they're like, oh, and then the hooting stopped. So they're like, well, we're not gonna, you know, the mosquitoes are thick or whatever. Okay, they in their eye, they confirmed it was an owl. So they go back inside. No harm, no foul. We'll check on it when it's brighter out tomorrow morning. Well, they get inside and they're having a late dinner because land of the midnight sun, it stays light, so you lose track of time. You know, you think it's 5 or 6 and it's 10 or 11. Trust me, I do it all the time and I live here. So that's what happened with them. They kind of lost track of time and started dinner a bit late. Now, Bridget is in front of this sink, and from what she was saying, she kept seeing movement, but she thought it was just her eyes playing tricks on her because of the light in the sky versus the shadows, the darkness in front of her. And so she just chalked it up to, oh, I'm moving my head and it's making things look like they're moving, right? Fair enough. So Josh is sitting on this little couch and he's playing solitaire with the deck of cards, and they're talking about Alaska and how much fun it's been the past few days, and you know, discussing maybe one day in the future we'll have a cabin. And as they're having this conversation, Bridget's staring down into the sink, doing something with the meat she was preparing. She was cutting off excess fat or something. And as she's doing that, she notices what she thought was her reflection in the window, the mirrored effect, right? So she looks up and sees this thing staring at her in her, like literally 1.5 feet away. On the back side of the sink is this window, and this thing staring at her. And she doesn't know what to make of it. She can't put what she's seeing with her eyes into her head. She can't wrap her mind around what she's exactly seeing, because she said it was dark gray, flat nose, really big eyes. This thing had a huge head, and it looked almost like a gray-faced mountain man, because she said it looked like a big beard, big wide jaw. Eyes were really, really big, and they were getting a little bit of eye shine from the light they had inside. And she drops what she's doing. She's stunned, and she takes a few steps back and trips over this little bit of a lip. You know, they had a piece of trim that went from the linoleum to a little bit of carpet there. She tripped over on it and flopped back, and she was in shock looking up at the window because this thing is still making eye contact with her. Well, Josh sees her fall. He jumps up and he giggles. He's like, "You all right? You all right?" He's not seeing what she's seeing. And she was trying to get her breath, but she kept like that. And Josh is like, "Are you having an asthma attack or something? What's going on?" And she points, and he turns and looks just in time to see whatever she saw move out of the way of the window. And he was like, "What the hell was that? Was that a bear?" And she couldn't talk. She was in shock, right? She's trying to hold on to his clothes because he was going to the window, and she's trying to stop him from potentially being in danger, right? Well, as he's trying to go to that window, she's sitting down, and the other window was right behind him where he was sitting. So as he's going over to the window in the little makeshift kitchen, now let me give you a size reference. This cabin was approximately 20 foot wide, 26 feet long. Good sized cabin. But anyway, so the kitchen part would be the last third of this cabin, and she tripped right around the third the distance of this place, right? And the window is immediately off to her left, and the one that she saw it in is immediately in front of her. And there's a couple poles down the middle of this cabin that held up the roof, in the center, load bearing. And as he's going forward, she grabs his clothes, and he's like, it's probably just a bear looking in, curious. And she finally caught her breath and says, no, it's a monster, it's a monster. And he's like, a monster? No, you know, we're new to Alaska, this is playing tricks on you. Well, he's turned away from both windows. He's quasi got the window that was behind his back over his right shoulder, and the other one over his left shoulder, and her in front of him. So he's kind of kitty corner to both windows. And as she's trying to tell him it was legit a monster, and he stopped kind of giggling at her because he could see the terror in her eyes. Now, as this is going on, he hears a thump over his right shoulder and glances back to the window that was just behind him where he was sitting on this little couch doing his little solitaire thing. When he looks back, he sees the same thing she did, staring at him in the window. Now, he said when he made eye contact with this thing, it kind of gave him a look like, you know, up yours kind of deal. His words, not mine. He said he felt like it gave him a look of up yours, and then it moved out of the way of the window. Immediately, he's panic stricken too, because he's like, what the hell is this? She's panicked. She runs, goes in. There's just one separate room in this place, and it was the bedroom, which was basically her facing that rear window would be off to her right, and that back corner, the back right corner, was basically the bedroom area with no windows in it. She darts into there. She's panicked. She's freaking out. Get in here, don't let it get you. And he's still trying to figure out what he saw. He retreats back in there with her. He finally gets himself pulled together because they're literally in shock. You know, they were not expecting to be dealing with something looking at them in the window. They expected to see some bears and maybe get, you know, a little, you know, some photo ops with a bear or whatever. And they were basically freaking out. He was shaking really hard. She was inconsolable for about an hour. They stayed in there. And the only reason he went back out is they started hearing a thumping on the front porch. Just this low, it wasn't at a regular cadence. It was just every once in a while there'd be a thump, 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 and then it would stop for a little bit, and then would continue again a little bit later. So that drew him out of that room. When he came out of the room, he has his flashlight. They still had the lanterns and stuff going. They had LED lanterns with, you know, fresh batteries in it, so that, you know, they would last all night. But he came out with the flashlight. He has his 45, and he recently out of the military, so he's well aware of tactics and all that, right? So as he comes out, he's tactically, you know, he's ready to do his thing. And as he's looking, now there's a window on either side of this front door. He's trying to use the light and see if anything's out one window. He shut it off, look out the other one, shut it off. Just kind of trying to change his, he didn't want to be pinpointed, I guess. Part of his training, he didn't want to just leave the light on and be easily seen. He didn't know for sure what they were dealing with. So he reverted back to tactical training type stuff. So he goes up to the front door and he peeks out the window. He looks around, he sees nothing. He decides, all right, whatever this is, I'm gonna rack a few rounds into the lake and let it know that guns live here and maybe it'll just go away. Steps out on the porch, and just as he's about finds a good spot to shoot into the water, just as he's about to shoot, he hears this low grumbling growl that he could feel in his feet in the small deck, right? He said that once he felt that in his feet, involuntarily, he literally stumbled back into the cabin and kind of sat there. The door was still open, so he kicked it shut real quick, and he felt disoriented. He said only time he ever felt like that before was when like a 500-pound bomb went off a quarter mile away, and it shook everyone so bad, you know, they kind of lost balance and stuff like that. He said it was similar to that. I mean, a 500-pound bomb going off a quarter mile, or that. Anyway, so that's what he equated it to. And so he kicked the door shut, and he's sitting there, and he's trying to figure out what the hell is that, because that growl continued, and he could feel it in the floor of the cabin. And he said he never felt that kind of fear. Now this is a soldier that was in for like a good number of years and did a lot of tours in the sandbox. His words, not mine. And combat vet, been there, done that, you know, been shot at, had to do the whole nine. And he said he never felt the kind of fear he felt from that growl. As he got up, pulled himself together, he knew immediately whatever that was is awfully damn big, and the 45 he felt insufficient with it. He had a 12 gauge that he had brought, under the bed. So he goes and grabs that, gets it loaded up, comes out, does this thing again, looking out the windows, didn't see nothing, steps out, looks around, and pops a couple rounds from the 12 gauge into the lake. Now, over the course of time of the growling, him falling in, shutting the door, and him stepping back out to shoot, he said was probably about an hour, because he had to collect himself and try to figure out what the fuck. So he steps back inside after shooting. Off in the distance, they could hear, it started off at a real low kind of a roar, and it ended in a super high pitched, like he said it was almost like a dual octave scream, and the scream was such that the windows, because of the lanterns going and stuff, he could see the windows doing this little vibration thing. It caught his eye because, yeah, I mean, they had a little bit of a mirrored effect going with the windows, and he could see the mirrored, you know, the mirrored image jiggling. So immediately they retreat back into the room. They killed one of the lamps. They brought the other one with them, and they shut the bedroom door, and they used the small dresser that was there. It was more like a little nightstand dresser, you know, with 2 drawers, and they slid that in front of the door, and they basically stayed held up into the corner of that bedroom until morning. He said during that course of time, between them shutting the door, putting that little waste of time barrier there, his words, not mine, in front of the door until the morning, they said they heard multiple screams from different sides of the cabin. There was clumps of something being thrown. He said it wasn't rocks because it didn't have the hard percussion of a rock knocking against the wood. He guesstimated it was probably clumps of grass or something like that, or dirt, just because of the sounds of it. Now, as he was consoling Bridget was telling him, I don't want you going outside. I don't want you dealing with any of this. We don't know what the hell this is. There's obviously more than one. We can hear the screams. And he's trying to tell her, well, look, we literally have like at least 3 more days before anyone gets back here, which, weather dependent, we don't know for sure. So she kind of wraps her mind around that thought, and she doesn't like it, and he's not happy about it either. So next morning comes, they didn't sleep a wink. Once he went out and everything was clear, Bridget calmed down enough and she crashed out. Now, when she crashed out, their words, not, I don't mean to laugh, I'm just picturing this little woman. As soon as they shut that little bedroom door, she slid that same nightstand in front of the door, basically, essentially locking him out of the room as well, which he was okay with because she was really dealing with it, you know. And so he's basically up. He makes coffee. He's doing his thing. He's trying to keep his mind off of it, but at the same time, situational awareness, you know. And he keeps looking out the windows. He can't stop looking, going from window to window and just going in a circle looking out the windows because he's freaking the fuck. What the hell is this shit? So about 4 or 5 hours goes by, he says, and he sat down on the couch, calmed down, and finally enjoyed some coffee as it was damn near cold. And he ended up dozing off a little bit. He wakes up startled with Bridget kicking his foot. Now, it's middle of the day. It's bright out. They're a little more calmed down. They each had a little bit of rest, and they go outside. Armed, of course. She was carrying his 45. He had the 12 gauge. They circled around the whole cabin looking for any sign of anything. He didn't notice what it threw at the cabin because there was tore up ground all over the place, so he couldn't make out if it was a clump of grass, dirt, or what have you. He just knew it wasn't a rock because of the sound. They look around. They don't see no tracks. They don't see no sign that anything had happened. So they go back inside. They calm down. Night comes, nothing happened. The next day comes, nothing happened. Now, the night before their ride is supposed to fly back in to pick them up from their honeymoon, they, just as it's starting to get into dusk, which it doesn't fully get dark, but dark in the trees, they hear the owl hoot again. Now, when they hear the owl hoot this time, they shut down everything, retreat into the room. Next morning, they hear the plane fly by, and they know that's the sign to get their stuff ready. The plane's gonna land, get them out of there, drop off whoever they were bringing in, and you know, they were gonna head home from their honeymoon. Once they heard the plane, they do their little unbarricade, and they were already packed, and they come out, and the person that ended up, it was about a half hour before the plane actually landed and taxied up to the little dock there or whatever, and they had a little pep talk amongst each other about bringing it up to friends and family that were showing up. And all they did is they opted to tell them, beware of the owl hoots and don't go out after dark. We saw something looking in the window at us. Don't know what it was, but it stared in the window at us. And they basically left it at that, for fear of ridicule from friends and family. And that sucks. I grant you, nothing ultra violent happened or anything of that nature. He said looking back on it, it seemed more curious, and the whole growling thing he attributed to a firearm. Now, that's 20/20 hindsight. I'm sure in the moment it felt a lot different, but I want to thank Josh and Bridget for sharing that with me and being patient with me getting back a hold of them. We got a lot of snow here. Here, let me show you. This is what I shoveled out here. We got roughly about 4 foot, maybe a little more. But anyway, that's what's been taking a while, is a whole lot of snow. It's just crazy, and we're supposed to get 18 to 24 more inches. Anyway, I'm gonna get this edited and get it loaded up. Thank all the new subscribers for joining me, and we'll catch you guys on the next one.